The Imperium of Man is a sprawling empire of over 1,000,000 worlds, a bastion of humanity lost in the terrifying darkness of the 41st millennium. Its territories are not connected by safe, well-charted stellar highways, but are isolated islands in a vast, hostile ocean. In this ocean, the warp, a realm of pure psychic energy and demonic insanity, churns between the stars. So, how does this fractured empire communicate? How do warnings of invasion travel from the eastern fringe to the segmentum solar? How does a call for reinforcements not arrive centuries too late? The answer does not lie in a miraculous technology, but in a sanctioned, suffering, and psychically gifted few. The answer is the Adeptus Astra Telepathica. In an age of galactic war, godlike entities, and unimaginable horror, the Imperium's tenuous grip on reality is maintained by one of its most vital and secretive organizations. This is the Adeptus Astra Telepathica. It is not a military force, though its servants often go to war. It is not the ecclesiarchy, though its practices are sacrosanct. It is the department of the Adeptus Terra tasked with a single monumental duty: the recruitment, training, and control of human psykers. Without it, the Imperium would not simply stumble, it would instantly and irrevocably shatter into 1,000,000,000 isolated fragments, each one doomed to be consumed by the awaiting darkness. To understand the Astra Telepathica is to understand its two primary arms, two sides of the same grim coin. The organization is fundamentally divided into the League of Black Ships and the Scholastia Psychana. These two bodies are united under the master of the Adeptus Astra Telepathica and his advisory council of several hundred senior officials. First, let us consider the League of Black Ships. This is the recruitment arm, a fleet of specialized vessels that is, itself, the second largest fleet in the entire Imperium, outdone only by the Imperial Navy itself. The purpose of these ships is as simple as it is terrifying. They are a galactic collection service for human psykers. Imagine a colossal vessel, its hull darker than the void it travels through, a silent leviathan entering a star system. Its arrival is not a cause for celebration but for dread. This is a black ship. By imperial decree, every world under the Emperor's dominion must pay a tithe of psykers, a harvest of its spiritually sensitive souls. The black ship's circuit is immense, visiting each world in its jurisdiction perhaps once every century. As it approaches, the planetary governor must gather the psykers from their populations, a duty as sacred as it is grim. These individuals, these witches, or mutants, in the eyes of the common citizen, are handed over to the dark, silent custodians of the ship. The black ship takes its cargo, its holds filled with the fearful and the dangerous, and moves on to the next world, its belly slowly filling with humanity's most volatile resource. But why such extreme measures? Why the need for these grim Gothic arcs of despair? Because an untrained psyker is not just a mutant, they are a door. A door through which the predators of the warp can step into real space. A single, uncontrolled psyker can invite demonic possession, unleashing a wave of corruption and death that can consume an entire city or even a planet. The black ships are not merely prison transports, they are a quarantine, a necessary evil to contain a potentially apocalyptic threat. The journey for these psykers is one of unimaginable hardship. The ships are equipped with psi-shielded holds to prevent escape, and some sources even speak of intentional sleep deprivation mechanisms, strobe lights, and non-stop chanting hymns to further break the will of the cargo and keep them subdued. It is a grim, dark process, but the Imperium believes it is for the greater good. Once the black ship's holds are full, its course is set for only one destination, Holy Terra. And upon reaching the throne world, the second arm of the Astra Telepathica takes over, the Scholastia Psychana. This is the training body, the vast institution dedicated to the brutal process of forging raw, dangerous psykers into usable tools for the Imperium. Here, within its mind halls and training facilities, the initial evaluations are made. The psykers are sorted by power, willpower, and stability. Their fates are decided in these halls. The weakest, the most unstable, those deemed too dangerous to even train, they're taken away. Their ultimate fate is a closely guarded secret, known only to the highest lords of the Telepathica and the Inquisition, but it is widely whispered that they are sacrificed to feed the insatiable appetite of the Emperor's golden throne, their souls fuel for the Astronomicon that guides all Imperial vessels. For the others, the training begins. It is a harsh, unforgiving process that can take years, a regime of intense mental conditioning and indoctrination designed to teach control, discipline, and an unshakable faith in the God Emperor. Those who survive this ordeal become what is known as sanctioned psykers, their abilities officially recognized and sanctioned for Imperial service. The most common and arguably most critical product of the Scholastia Psychana is the astropath. These individuals are the beating heart of the Imperium's communication network. They are the servers of a galactic internet that has no cables, only nightmares. An astropath is a psyker specifically trained in the art of astrotelepathy, the ability to send and receive messages across the vast gulfs of space by projecting their thoughts through the warp. Picture an astropath. They are almost always blind, their eyes milky white or seared shut, and they typically wear robes of a distinct green. They do not see the world as we do. Their psychic senses provide them with a form of blind sight, an intuition that informs them of their surroundings. They can be found in the command centers of Imperial Guard regiments, on the bridges of Navy warships, and in the citadels of planetary governors. Their duty is to send and receive the messages that hold the Empire together. A call for help from a besieged world. An edict from a High Lord on Terra. A report of a Xenos sighting. These messages are not sent as clear text, but as phantasmal visions, empathic transmissions, and complex allegorical imagery. The process is arduous and dangerous. Sending a message over a great distance requires the astropath to enter a deep trance, and the turbulent nature of the warp can distort the message, scramble its meaning, or attract the attention of malevolent entities. This is why, for long-distance communication, astropaths often work in choirs, linking their minds together to combine their psychic strength and improve the clarity and range of the transmission. But why are they blind? The answer lies in the single most defining and traumatic moment of an astropath's life, the soul-binding ritual. After their initial training, those psykers deemed suitable to become astropaths are taken deep beneath the Imperial Palace, to the mind halls of the City of Sight or the Obsidian Keep, to kneel before the Emperor himself. In a ritual that can last for hours, the astropath's mind is agonizingly reshaped, bound to the unimaginable psychic might of the Master of Mankind. This process passes on a fragment of the Emperor's will, granting the astropath a measure of protection against the predations of warp entities. But this divine blessing comes at a terrible cost. The psychic feedback from the ritual is so immense that it overloads the astropath's sensory nerves. For the vast majority, the result is permanent blindness. Some may lose other senses like hearing or touch. It is a sacrifice, a burning out of their mortal senses in exchange for the power and protection needed to perform their duty. There are rare exceptions, astropaths judged so strong-willed they emerge from the soul binding with their sight intact. But they are considered extraordinarily fortunate to have avoided the agonizing price most of their brethren pay. Not all who graduate from the Scholastia Psychana become astropaths. Those with different aptitudes or whose talents lie in more direct applications of psychic power are turned into sanctioned psykers for other branches of the Imperial machine. These individuals are weapons, albeit deeply feared and mistrusted ones. On the battlefields of the Imperial Guard, you might find the Primaris Psyker. This is a potent battle psyker, a master of disciplines like biomancy, pyromancy, or telekinesis. They are a valuable asset to a commander, capable of smiting enemies with warp lightning or shielding allies with kinetic barriers. Yet they are also a walking liability. Their comrades fear them, and their use of the warp can attract perilous attention. So great is the fear of a Primaris Psyker succumbing to the perils of the warp, and becoming a demonic portal that a commissar traveling with them is under orders to execute them immediately at the first sign of trouble. A grim protocol officially known as, "It's for your own good." Alongside them serve the word-vane psykers. Where the Primaris psyker is a skilled individual, word-vanes are weaker psykers who operate in small units, a brotherhood of psykers. They combine their limited power to manifest psychic phenomena, but they are even more unstable and vulnerable than their more powerful counterparts. In the ranks of the Inquisition, the most powerful and strong-willed sanctioned psykers might even rise to become inquisitors themselves, using their gifts to hunt the very demons and witches they were once in danger of becoming. So, we have established the framework. The Adeptus Astra Telepathica is a machine of two parts. One that gathers the raw material from across the galaxy, and another that forges that material into vital tools. These tools, the astropaths and sanctioned psykers, are the glue that holds the Imperium together and a key weapon in its endless wars. They are servants who pay for their power with their sight, their freedom, and often their very souls. But this is merely the static picture of the 41st millennium. How did this vital institution come to be? Its origins are not in the stagnant darkness of the 41st millennium, but in the age of hope and conquest that was the Great Crusade. In our next part, we will travel back 10,000 years to the time of the Emperor's direct rule. We will explore the founding of the Astra Telepathica, its original mandate to maintain the Astronomicon, and its role in purging the Witch Kings of Old Night. We will delve into the history of its headquarters, the mysterious city of Sight within the Imperial Palace, and its Whispering Tower. And we will meet its most formidable early agents, the Sisters of Silence, the psychic null blanks who once manned the black ships and hunted the most dangerous psykers in the galaxy. The story of how this institution survived the betrayal of the Horus heresy and the machinations of tyrants like Goj Van Dyer is a saga in itself. The Adeptus Astra Telepathica as it exists in the stagnant darkness of the 41st millennium. A vast, bureaucratic machine processing human souls into tools for a dying empire. But to understand how this institution came to be, we must journey back 10,000 years, to a time of thunder and conquest. We must return to the end of the Unification Wars, and the dawn of the Great Crusade. This was an age of hope, of a galaxy being reclaimed for humanity by the immortal Emperor of mankind. But the Emperor, a psyker of unimaginable power himself, was acutely aware of the dangers of the warp. He had spent centuries battling the psychic witch kings and demon-possessed psykers that had plagued Terra during the Age of Strife. He knew that uncontrolled psykers were a threat to his nascent Imperium. Yet he also knew that a galactic empire could not be built without them. The solution was not to destroy every psyker but to control them, to sanction them. And thus the Astra Telepathica was born. The Emperor's vision for the Great Crusade required two psychic cornerstones. The first was the Astronomicon, the colossal psychic beacon he constructed on Terra to guide ships through the warp. The second was a reliable means of communication. The Astra Telepathica was mandated to provide both. In these early days, the organization was responsible for maintaining and running the Astronomicon itself, a duty that would later be handed to a separate body, the Adeptus Astronomica, after the Horus heresy. But its most vital product was the astropath. The Emperor, having identified psykers strong enough to resist the temptations of the warp, forged them into a core of interstellar telepathic communicators. These astrotelepots were the only practical way for the Imperium to maintain unity across the unimaginable gulfs between stars. Their messages, sent as phantasmal visions and empathic transmissions rather than words, were the lifeblood of the Crusade's command and control structure. To house this vital institution, a unique and somber headquarters was constructed within the Emperor's own imperial palace in the Himalaysian mountains, the City of Sight. Imagine a place within the very heart of the imperial palace, a section that feels utterly forsaken. Where the rest of the palace was a celebration of human achievement, the City of Sight was built to weigh on the soul. Beyond its main entrance, the obsidian arch, lay a forest of iron towers, lightless garrets, and silent thoroughfares. The streets were empty, populated only by solitary ghosts in hooded green robes. The psykers of the Astra Telepathica preferred to travel through a network of tunnels beneath the city, for the world above was a constant, deafening cacophony of undisciplined thoughts and wild emotions. The very walls and rock of the city were threaded with psi-disruptive crystals, making it a quieter, more bearable place for those with the telepath's gifts. Within this bleak city, several structures stood out. The Gallery of Mirrors, a vast, cathedral-like edifice, was where successful initiates passed on their way to the soul-binding ritual far beneath the palace. It is speculated that the mirrors gave them one last look at their own faces before the ritual seared their eyes from their sockets. Then there was the Whispering Tower. This structure shone with a lattice of silver light invisible to most mortals, and at its heart was a great amphitheater where thousands of high-ranking astropaths sat in ascending tiers, linking their minds to sharpen the focus of their gestalt consciousness and send messages across the stars. The Astra Telepathica was not merely an organization of communicators and mystics. It possessed a formidable, terrifying enforcement arm. During the Great Crusade, the League of Black Ships was not just a fleet. It was a joint operation with the most effective psyker hunters in human history, the Sisters of Silence. The Sisters of Silence, an all-female order of blanks or untouchables, beings who generate a psychic null field, were the perfect counter to rogue psykers. As part of the Astra Telepathica's Departamento Investigates, they manned the black ships and scoured the nascent Imperium for emerging psykers. Their very presence could suppress a psyker's power, making them the ideal custodians for the volatile cargo. They were the hunters who ensured the Witch Kings of old night were rounded up and brought to sanction or execution. This system was a perfectly balanced, symbiotic relationship. The Silent Sisters, immune to psychic influence, would secure the psykers. The Telepathica would then process and train them. Together, they formed one of the most critical pillars of the Great Crusade, operating from their shadowy headquarters in the City of Sight. The golden age of the Great Crusade was not to last. The betrayal of Horus plunged the entire Imperium into a civil war that would scar the galaxy for millennia. The Astra Telepathica, so vital to Imperial cohesion, found itself on the front lines of this new, terrifying conflict. As the heresy spread, the Telepathica's greatest strength, its galactic communication network, became a critical vulnerability. The Ruin Storm, a massive warp tempest unleashed by the traitors, cut off vast segments of the galaxy, making astropathic communication difficult or impossible. The City of Sight itself became a target. During the Solar War, the Siege of Terra saw the Imperial Palace, including the domains of the Telepathica, become a bloody battlefield. We can only imagine the chaos in the Whispering Tower as astropaths were driven mad by the empathic screams of a dying world or the distortions of the Chaos Gods. The Horus Heresy also shattered the Astra Telepathica's foundational partnership. The Sisters of Silence, having fought valiantly throughout the conflict, saw their numbers dwindle catastrophically in the aftermath. As an organized, galaxy-spanning order within the Telepathica, they largely died out, becoming little more than a legend for millennia. This forced a fundamental restructuring. Without its dedicated core of blank wardens, the Telepathica had to rely on other Imperial agencies to guard its black ships, such as the Sisters of Battle or Inquisitorial Stormtroopers, whose faith, rather than a null presence, was their shield against corruption. In the wake of the heresy, in what became known as the Time of Rebirth, the Imperium was reformed into the more familiar, bureaucratic Adeptus Terra. The Astra Telepathica was reorganized as well. Its duty of overseeing the Astronomicon was formally handed over to the newly created Adeptus Astronomica. Its headquarters eventually moved from the war-scarred City of Sight to a new palace complex known as the Obsidian Keep, though it is unknown if this was a part of the old city or an entirely new location. The institution faced other trials in the millennia that followed. During Goj Vandire's reign of blood, the tyrannical High Lord of the Administratum managed to subvert most of the Imperium's institutions. However, he could not control the Astra Telepathica through conventional means. Its master at the time, Lord Phaedrus, was a potent psyker who could see through Vandire's deceit and charisma. Unable to assassinate him, as his successor would likely be just as powerful, Vandire resorted to a far more insidious tactic. He used a Culexus assassin, a blank of terrifying power, to psychically cripple Lord Phaedrus, robbing him of his abilities while keeping him alive on life support. Broken and powerless, Phaedrus agreed to follow Vandire, on the condition that his condition remain a secret. In this dark chapter, even the master of the Telepathica was not safe from the Imperium's political rot. From the hopeful, if grim, foundations of the Great Crusade, through the fiery trial of the Horus heresy, and into the slow decay of the following millennia, the Adeptus Astra Telepathica was forged in fire and blood. It lost its original home, its militant arm, and its direct control over the Astronomicon. It survived tyranny and subversion. The institution that emerged into the 41st millennium was a hardened, more specialized version of its former self, a testament to its own absolute necessity. In our next part, we will descend into the grim reality of the 41st millennium. We will walk the decks of the dreaded black ships and experience the harrowing journey of a psyker from their homeworld to the soul forges of Terra. We will detail the brutal sorting process, the sanctioning brands, and the ultimate fates that await those deemed useful, from the battlefields of the Imperial Guard to the soul furnaces of the Golden Throne. The age of hope is long gone. Welcome to the age of enduring darkness. We have traced the history of the Astra Telepathica from its founding in an age of thunder to its endurance through heresy and tyranny. Now we must confront the grim engine that fuels this entire institution. This is not a story of grand battles or political intrigue, but a chronicle of a silent, galactic harvest. It is the story of the black ships and the countless human souls whose lives are their cargo. Across the million worlds of the Imperium, a silent tithe is levied. It is not a tithe of guns or grain or soldiers. It is a tithe of people. The psyker tithe is one of the most sacred and most terrifying obligations of an imperial world. To fail to meet it is to invite exterminatus. The mechanism for this collection is the fleet of the League of Black Ships, a procession of dark arcs that moves from star to star on a circuit that may take centuries to complete. For most citizens, their arrival is the stuff of myth and nightmare. For the psyker, it is the end of the world they know. The process begins long before the black ship's shadow falls across a world. Planetary authorities, from the hive world enforcers to the feudal world's witch hunters, are tasked with identifying psykers. Methods vary wildly. On some worlds, it is a brutal inquisition with suspected witches burned at the stake. On others, it involves complex machinery or the intuition of sanctioned psykers themselves. Once identified, these individuals are gathered in holding pens, awaiting the day the black ship arrives. A landing platform on a dusty frontier world. A grim, faceless adept in the robes of the Adeptus Terra stands with a data slate, while local enforcers herd a group of terrified, malnourished people. They are of all ages, from children to the elderly. Some are screaming, their minds assaulted by the thoughts of those around them. Others are catatonic, lost in inner worlds of terror. Some may even display minor, uncontrolled psychic phenomena, floating dust, flickering lights, a whisper that echoes in the mind. The adept checks each name impassively. This is not a person to him, it is a unit of cargo. A resource. The planetary governor watches from a safe distance, relieved to be discharging his duty and seeing the dangerous elements removed from his world. They are marched up the ramp into the cavernous, echoing hold of the black ship. The air inside is cold, smelling of ozone, antiseptic, and fear. The massive blast doors seal behind them with a final, thunderous clang, plunging them into a darkness broken only by the dim red glow of emergency lumens. This is the end of their old life. Their journey into the heart of the Imperium has begun. Life aboard a black ship is a form of hellish transit. The psykers are not treated as passengers but as hazardous material. They are housed in vast, multi-level holding bays, often in individual, psi-dampened cells to prevent them from interacting and amplifying each other's powers. The conditions are meticulously designed to break their will and keep them subdued. Some accounts speak of non-stop, deafening broadcasts of imperial hymns and religious dogma, a form of psychic screaming intended to disorient and pacify. Others mention strobe lighting and sleep deprivation protocols. The crew of a black ship is a silent, mysterious order. They are not the Sisters of Silence of old, but a specialized branch of the Adeptus Astra Telepathica itself, supported by tech priests and armed guards. They move through the gloom, their faces often hidden by hoods or rebreathers. They rarely speak, communicating through hand signs or data pulses. They administer nutrient pastes and conduct physiological checks, but offer no comfort, no explanation. Their primary duty is to ensure the cargo survives the journey, but does not become a threat. And threats are constant. Despite the damping fields, psykers can still manifest their abilities. A biokinetic might accidentally warp their own body into a monstrous form. A pyromancer could burst into flame, incinerating themselves and those nearby. But the greatest danger is demonic possession. The collective, untrained psychic energy of hundreds of psykers, trapped in a vessel traveling through the warp, is a beacon for the entities that dwell there. It is not uncommon for sections of a black ship to be sealed off and purged with flame or virus after a possession outbreak. The crew are trained for this. They are the shepherds of a flock that is constantly trying to summon wolves to devour them. The journey to Terra can take years, even decades. Many psykers do not survive. They die of shock, of self-inflicted wounds, or are put down by the crew after a psychic incident. For those who do survive, the experience scars them deeply, stripping away their former identity and preparing them in a brutal fashion for the harsh conditioning to come. After its long voyage, the black ship finally arrives in the Sol system. It bypasses the bustling orbital docks of Luna and moves directly to a high anchor point over Terra. Here, the psykers are transferred to secure shuttles and brought down to the surface, to the domain of the Astra Telepathica, the Obsidian Keep and its associated facilities. This is where the sorting begins. The psykers are subjected to a battery of tests by the masters of the Scholastia Psychana. Their power is measured, their discipline identified, and, most importantly, their stability and willpower are assessed. This process, known as the proving, determines their fate. The candidates are sorted into several broad categories. First, the irreclaimable. These are the psykers deemed too weak, too unstable, or too corrupted to be of any use. They are the most numerous group. They are led away never to be seen again. Their ultimate destination is one of the most closely guarded secrets of the Imperium, but it is an open secret among the higher echelons. They are taken to the burning chambers and their souls are fed into the Golden Throne, a daily sacrifice of thousands to sustain the Emperor's fading life and power the Astronomicon. Second, the Potentia. These are the stable, usable psykers. They are strong enough to be useful, but their talents may not lie in communication. They are marked with the sigil of sanctioning, a brand burned into their flesh, and will be trained to become sanctioned psykers for the Imperial Guard, the Inquisition, or other branches of the Adeptus Terra. Their training is harsh, a regime of mental fortification and dogmatic indoctrination designed to make them into living weapons that will not break under the strain of battle or the temptations of the warp. Third and most select are the Telepathica. These are the psykers whose minds show the specific aptitude for astrotelepathy. They are the chosen ones, the candidates for the most vital role the Telepathica plays. They are to become astropaths. For the Telepathica candidates, the proving is only the beginning. The true trial, the moment that will define the rest of their existence, is the soul binding. This is the ritual that separates the astropath from all other psykers. Narrator: the candidates are taken deep beneath the Imperial Palace, to chambers so ancient and sacred that few outside the Telepathica's highest ranks have ever seen them. They are brought before a device known as the psy-engine. Here they kneel. The ritual begins. It is not a gentle process. It is described as having one's mind scoured with fire and light. The candidate's psychic essence is violently torn open and bound, soul to soul, to the immense, raging psychic presence of the God Emperor upon the golden throne. Imagine the experience. A flood of pure, undiluted power that is both divine and agonizing. It is the light of a sun being poured directly into their brain. It forges their soul, granting them a portion of the Emperor's own will and a powerful protection against the denizens of the warp. This is why astropaths are so resilient to demonic influence compared to other psykers. But this divine blessing comes at a terrible, predictable price. The psychic feedback is so immense that it overloads the astropath's sensory nerves. For the vast majority, the optic nerves are burned away, resulting in permanent, irreversible blindness. Some may lose their hearing, their sense of smell, or even their ability to feel touch. It is a sacrifice, a burning out of their mortal senses in exchange for the power and protection needed to bear the immense burden of their duty. They emerge from the ritual forever changed, their eyes seared shut, but their psychic sight expanded, allowing them to perceive the world around them as a shimmering tapestry of emotions and energies. Those who survive are now astropaths, soul-bound to the Emperor. They are assigned their duties, to a warship, a guard regiment, a governor's court, and sent out into the galaxy, their blindness a permanent badge of their sacrifice, and their minds a vital link in the chain that holds the Imperium together. The journey from a frightened individual on a backwater world to a sanctioned tool of the Imperium is one of the darkest processes imaginable. It is a system built on fear, sacrifice, and an absolute utilitarian view of human life. The black ships are a necessary evil, the soul binding a traumatic apotheosis. This relentless, grinding machine consumes human souls by the thousands every day to keep the Imperium functioning. But what of those who are not chosen for the soul binding? What of the sanctioned psykers who are trained for war? In our next part, we will enter the training halls of the Scholastia Psychana and the battlefields of the Imperial Guard. We will explore the different psychic disciplines, from pyromancy to divination, and see how the Telepathica forges its human weapons. We will meet the Primaris and Wordvane psykers, and understand the constant peril they face from the enemies without and the warp within. We have followed the path of the psyker from the grim holds of the black ships to the soul-forging ritual beneath the Imperial Palace. We have seen how the astropath is created, a soul-bound messenger for the Imperium. But the Astra Telepathica forges more than just messengers. It forges weapons. These are the sanctioned psykers who do not gaze into the void to send messages, but who stand on the battlefields of the 41st millennium to unleash the raw power of the warp upon the enemies of mankind. These individuals are the Potentia, the psykers deemed stable and powerful enough for direct service, but not suited for the soul binding. Their training is different, their purpose is different, and the dangers they face are, in many ways, even more immediate. They are sent to war and they take the warp with them. After the sorting on Terra, those psykers marked as Potentia are taken to the training facilities of the Scholastia Psychana. These are not the hallowed halls of the Astronomicon or the somber quiet of the Obsidian Keep, but brutal, fortress-like structures designed for one purpose: to break a human mind and rebuild it as a controlled conduit for destructive power. Describe the training halls. Imagine a vast, circular chamber of bare rockreet, its walls inscribed with warding sigils and lit by flickering glow globes. Acolytes in simple, gray robes kneel in rows, their faces strained with concentration. Before them stands a drill abbot, a senior psyker of the Telepathica, his voice a whip crack of authority. He drills them not in combat but in control. They are taught to build psychic wards, mental barriers to shield their souls from the predatory entities of the Empyrean. They are forced to meditate for hours on end, learning to silence the witch sight that shows them the swirling emotions and hidden horrors of those around them. Failure is not tolerated. A lapse in concentration might result in a psychic backlash that injures their fellows, or worse, opens a tiny rift into the warp. For such failures, the consequences are swift and final. The commissars attached to the Scholastia Psychana are under no illusions. A rogue trainee is a demonic incident waiting to happen, and they are authorized to execute them on the spot. This initial conditioning is about survival, the survival of the psyker and the survival of everyone near them. They are taught a fanatical devotion to the God Emperor, for faith is considered a potent shield against the warp. They learn that their power is not a gift but a curse, one that can only be born through absolute discipline and service. They are taught to fear their own abilities as much as any external threat. Once a baseline of control is established, the acolytes are tested to discover their specific psychic discipline, the natural inclination of their power. The Scholastia Psychana recognizes several formal schools, and a psyker's training is then specialized to hone their innate talents into a reliable weapon of war. First, biomancy, the discipline of life force. A biomancer can accelerate their own healing, harden their skin to the toughness of plasteel, or wither an enemy's flesh with a touch. On the battlefield, they are formidable close-quarters combatants, nearly unkillable and able to deliver death with a mere gesture. Second, pyromancy, the most direct and visceral discipline. The pyromancer calls forth fire from the immaterium, conjuring sheets of warp flame that can melt ceramite and incinerate battalions. They are walking artillery pieces, their presence often announced by a rise in temperature and the smell of ozone and ash. Third, telekinesis. These psykers manipulate kinetic energy. They can halt a hail of bullets in mid-air, throw battle tanks like children's toys, or create invisible shields to protect their allies. The power of a telekinetic is limited only by their will and the strain their body can endure. Fourth, divination. This is perhaps the most valued discipline by Imperial commanders. Diviners peer into the possible futures of the timeline, granting premonitions of enemy ambushes, pinpointing weaknesses and fortifications, or guiding the aim of a sniper. A single diviner can turn the tide of a battle by giving his commander a crucial moment of foresight. Fifth, telepathy. While astropaths use a specialized form of this for communication, battle telepaths use it for assault. They can cloud the minds of enemy soldiers, causing confusion and panic. They can project psychic shrieks that liquefy brains, or even dominate the will of others, turning them into unwitting puppets. Finally, demonology. This is the most forbidden and dangerous art. While the Imperium officially condemns its use, some branches, particularly the Ordo Malleus of the Inquisition, train psykers in its controlled application. These psykers learn to identify, banish, and bind demonic entities. To use this power is to dance on the edge of the blade, for a single mistake can see the demonologist torn apart or possessed by the very thing they sought to control. Upon graduation, the newly sanctioned psyker is branded with the sigil of sanctioning and assigned to their duty. The most common deployment is with the Imperial Guard. Here they primarily serve in one of two roles. The first is the Primaris Psyker. This is an individual of significant power and will, a graduate who has mastered their discipline. They operate as a solo asset, attached to a regiment's command staff. A Primaris Psyker is a force multiplier, a walking piece of heavy artillery. They are respected for their power, but they are also feared and mistrusted by the very soldiers they fight alongside. They are always accompanied by a commissar, whose duty is not just to maintain morale, but to watch the psyker for any sign of corruption or loss of control. The protocol is clear. At the first sign of the perils of the warp, the telltale signs of demonic manifestation or psychic feedback, the commissar is to execute the psyker immediately. This is not seen as a punishment, but a mercy, preventing a far worse fate for the entire regiment. The second, more common role is the word vein psyker. These are the weaker psykers, those who could not hope to control their power alone. They are deployed in small units known as brotherhoods. By combining their psychic might, They can achieve effects similar to a Primaris psyker, but they are far more unstable. The mental feedback within a wordvane choir is intense, and if one member falters or is slain, the entire unit can suffer catastrophic psychic backlash, potentially killing them all or opening a gateway to hell itself. Beyond the guard, sanctioned psykers serve across the Imperium. The Inquisition employs the most powerful and stable as interrogators or even full inquisitors, using their gifts to hunt witches, heretics, and demons. The Imperial Navy uses them to sense disturbances in the warp during travel or to defend against boarding actions. The Adeptus Arbites might use a telepath to extract confessions or root out cults. Wherever a controlled, destructive psychic force is needed, the Scholastia Psychana has provided the tool. The life of a sanctioned psyker is one of constant, grinding tension. They are caught in a paradox. They are commanded to use the very power that defines them as a dangerous mutant, all while knowing that each use brings them closer to the edge of damnation. The perils of the warp are an ever-present threat. Every time a psyker taps into the immaterium, they risk drawing too much power, causing a feedback loop that can boil their brain, explode their body, or tear a hole in reality. They risk attracting the attention of a demon, which can attempt to possess them or drive them insane with whispers. They are watched with suspicion by their allies, and hunted with fervor by their enemies. Many are the stories of sanctioned psykers who, in a moment of desperation or strain, succumbed and had to be put down by their own comrades. They are tools, and like any tool they are expendable. The Imperium views them as a renewable resource, one harvested by the black ships and forged by the Scholastia Psychana. Their sacrifice is noted in ledgers but rarely mourned. They are the embodiment of the Imperium's grim necessity, to use the weapons of the enemy, no matter the cost to the soul wielding them. We have now seen the two primary outputs of the Astra Telepathica: the astropath, the soulbound messenger, and the sanctioned psyker, the human weapon. One binds the Imperium together with communication, the other defends it with destructive power. Both are products of the same brutal, unforgiving system. But who oversees this vast, galaxy-spanning machinery? Who are the masters of the Telepathica? In our final part, we will look at the organization's internal structure, from the mysterious master of the Telepathica to the political battles within the Senatorum Imperialis. We will explore the Telepathica's relationship with the Inquisition and the other Adepta, and examine its role in the unfolding dark future of the 41st millennium. We have journeyed through the grim mechanics of the Astra Telepathica, from the harvesting of psykers to the forging of astropaths and the sanctioning of battle psykers. But this vast, galaxy-spanning machine does not run itself. It is directed by a powerful and secretive leadership, embroiled in the Byzantine politics of the Imperium and facing challenges that threaten to overwhelm it entirely. This is the world of the masters of the Telepathica. In the 41st millennium, to control the Astra Telepathica is to hold the lifeline of the entire Imperium in your hands. It is a position of immense power and immense peril. The individual who holds this title is one of the few who truly understands how fragile the edifice of humanity really is, for he is the one who must ensure its voices are never silenced. At the apex of the organization sits the master of the Adeptus Astra Telepathica. This individual is one of the 12 High Lords of Terra, a member of the Senatorum Imperialis, the ruling council of the Imperium. His official title is often shortened to the Master of the Telepathica. This position is almost always held by a powerful psyker, for who else could understand the complexities and dangers of the institution he commands? The Master's responsibilities are staggering. He oversees the entire League of Black Ships and the Scholastia Psychana. He is ultimately responsible for the steady flow of psykers to the Golden Throne and the even distribution of astropaths and sanctioned psykers across the Imperium's military and administrative branches. His word can condemn a world for failing its tithe, or authorize the founding of a new sanctioned psyker regiment. Beneath the Master exists a complex bureaucracy of hundreds of senior officials, directors, and administrators. Key figures include the Grand Master of the Black Ships, who commands the fleet, and the Grand Master of the Scholastia Psychana, who oversees all training and sanctioning. There are also the Psychanistrates, who are the senior adepts responsible for the initial testing and sorting of psykers upon their arrival on Terra. The security of the Telepathica's terrestrial holdings, particularly the Obsidian Keep, falls to the Black Sentinels, an elite corps of soldiers whose loyalty is to the Telepathica alone. The Master of the Telepathica does not rule in a vacuum. His position on the Senatorum Imperialis is one of constant political maneuvering and rivalry. The Adeptus Astra Telepathica has fraught relationships with many of the other powerful institutions of the Imperium. First and foremost is its relationship with the Inquisition. The two organizations are locked in a dance of mutual dependence and deep suspicion. The Inquisition relies on the Telepathica for its own core of psyker agents and for the astropaths that carry its messages. However, the Ordo Hereticus and the Ordo Malleus watch the Telepathica with an intensely critical eye. They see a massive concentration of psykers, the very source of demonic threat, operating at the heart of the Imperium. A single, massive failure within the Telepathica, such as a black ship being lost to demonic incursion, could bring the full wrath of the Inquisition down upon it. Then there is the Adeptus Mechanicus. The relationship is one of cold transaction. The Mechanicus provides the technology for the black ships, the psi dampeners, and the arcane machinery used in the soul-binding ritual. In return, the Telepathica provides the Mechanicus with a tithe of psykers for its own obscure purposes, and with astropaths for its fleets. However, the Mechanicus's own pursuit of knowledge regarding the warp often borders on the heretical, creating a constant, low-level tension between the two adepta. Perhaps the most complex relationship is with the Adeptus Astronomica and the Adeptus Custodes. The Astronomica, which manages the Emperor's Great Beacon, is a consumer of the Telepathica's most tragic product, the countless psykers fed to the Golden Throne. This creates a direct, logistical dependency. The Adeptus Custodes, as the guardians of the Emperor's physical body, are the ultimate guarantors of the Telepathica's most sacred ritual, the soul binding. They guard the approaches to the Emperor's throne room and the secret passages to the soul binding chambers. Their presence is a constant reminder that the Telepathica's most vital function happens under the watchful eyes of the Emperor's own protectors. For 10,000 years, the Astra Telepathica has operated on a precarious but stable balance. But the era known as the Dark Imperium has shattered that balance entirely. The birth of the Great Rift has torn the galaxy in half, plunging entire sectors into a permanent state of warp storm and demonic incursion. The consequences for the Telepathica are catastrophic. The Great Rift has caused a phenomenon known as the Psychic Awakening. Humanity's psychic potential is flowering at an unprecedented rate, meaning more psykers are being born than ever before. This should be a boon for the black ships, but it is a curse. The sheer volume is overwhelming the already strained collection and processing system. Furthermore, the instability of the warp makes astropathic communication across the rift nearly impossible and infinitely more dangerous. The choirs in the Whispering Tower on Terra strain to push messages through the raging Empyrean, and many astropaths are driven mad in the attempt. The Imperium Nihilus, the half of the galaxy cut off from Terra, faces an even direr situation. Black ship circuits are disrupted, and many worlds are completely isolated. Without a steady supply of new astropaths from Terra, isolated systems are forced to rely on their own locally trained psykers, a dangerous and heretical practice in the eyes of the wider Imperium. In these dark realms, the authority of the Astra Telepathica has frayed, and the line between sanctioned psyker and rogue which has blurred beyond recognition. In this new age, the Telepathica's role has become more critical and more desperate than ever. The demand for psykers to fuel the Golden Throne has skyrocketed, as the Emperor requires ever more power to maintain the Astronomican's light against the encroaching darkness. The institution is stretched to its breaking point, trying to hold together an empire that is fundamentally coming apart at the seams. So, what is the Adeptus Astra Telepathica? It is the collector of a damned tithe. It is the forger of blind messengers and human weapons. It is a political entity vying for power on a galactic scale. It is the keeper of a flame that must never be extinguished. It is an institution built on a foundation of profound sin. It consumes human lives by the thousands every day. It inflicts horrific trauma upon the very people it saves from a worse fate. It operates on a principle of absolute utilitarian horror, that the suffering of the few is a price worth paying for the survival of the whole. In the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, there is only war, and the Astra Telepathica ensures that this war can be coordinated, that calls for help can be sent, and that the weapons of the enemy can be turned back upon them with their own terrible power. Without the Astra Telepathica, the Imperium of Man would cease to exist within a generation. Its worlds would fall silent, its armies would become directionless mobs, and its emperor would fade into death. It is the ultimate paradox. The Imperium's fear and loathing of the witch is matched only by its absolute dependence on her. The Astra Telepathica is the chain of souls that binds a dying empire together, and it is a chain that grows heavier with every passing moment. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the lore of the Adeptus Astra Telepathica. Thank you for watching. The Emperor protects.